Okay, I don't know where else to go with this. I can't talk to my friends, I definitely can't talk to his family. My brain feels like it's full of screaming static, and I just need to type it out into the void to see if it makes any sense. My boyfriend Dimitri is dead. He died 2 days ago. The official report, the one I gave the very kind-faced park ranger, is that he slipped and fell while we were hiking on the coast. An accident, a terrible, tragic accident, and I'm the grieving girlfriend, the one who saw it all happen. I'm playing the part, I think. I'm saying the right things. But when I'm alone in our apartment, the silence is so loud. It keeps asking me one question over and over. Here it is, the thing that's clawing its way up my throat. In that last second, right before he went over, we were fighting. He had this look on his face, a look I'd never seen before, and I took a step back. It wasn't a push, it wasn't a shove. It was just a single small step backward, but he was on the edge. My movement made him readjust, his heel found nothing but air and he was gone. It was instinct, right? A reflex. Like pulling your hand from a flame, you don't think, you just react. Anyone would have done that. Anyone, please, someone tell me that. Tell me you would have done the same thing. That whole day felt wrong, like a movie where the color is just slightly off. It was supposed to be our anniversary, a celebration, but Dmitri woke up in a mood. Not angry, not sad, just heavy. He had this suffocating presence, a quiet intensity that sucked all the air out of the room. I remember the sound of his spoon scraping his cereal bowl, a rhythmic, grating noise in the dead silence of our kitchen. He didn't look at me, not once. He just stared out the window at the gray, weeping sky. I suggested brunch at that little place we love, maybe a movie, something easy and warm. But he was insistent. I want to go to the Osprey Point Trail, he said, his voice flat. I'd never even heard of it. It's supposed to be beautiful, he added, still not looking at me. The view is incredible. I should have said no, 1,000 times no. My gut was screaming at me. The air was damp and cold, the sky the color of a dirty dishcloth. It was not a day for coastal hikes, but arguing with Dmitri when he got like this was pointless. It was like reasoning with a brick wall. Over the years, I had learned that sometimes the path of least resistance was the only one that didn't end with a slammed door and a week of punishing silence. So I swallowed my protests, pulled on my hiking boots, and tried to ignore the tight, cold knot in my stomach. The trail was a nightmare. It wasn't a proper path, more like a muddy suggestion of one carved into the side of the cliff. On one side, a sheer rock face slick with green-black algae. On the other, a dizzying drop to the churning gray ocean below. The waves crashed against the rocks with a sound like cannons firing, and the spray was so cold it felt like tiny needles on my face. Every gust of wind felt like it was trying to peel me off the cliffside, a physical push towards the abyss. The path was littered with loose shale that skittered away under my feet with every tentative step. Dmitri, can we please go back? I asked, my voice barely a whisper against the wind. This isn't safe, I'm really not comfortable. He just kept walking a few paces ahead of me. Don't be a baby, Courtney, it's fine. His words weren't reassuring, they were dismissive, a flick of the wrist to my very real fear. We got to a narrow outcrop, a place where the path was barely a foot wide. He stopped there, turning to face me, effectively blocking the only way back, and that's when the fight started. He brought up the job offer in Portland again. It wasn't a discussion. It was an indictment. He twisted my ambition into a personal betrayal, my dreams into an abandonment of him. The words themselves were small and petty, but they were fueled by this terrifying, cold fury. He accused me of not caring, of being selfish, of secretly planning to leave him all along. His voice, usually so calm and measured, had a raw, jagged edge to it. He wasn't just upset, he was, I don't know the word, he was curdling. And all I could think about was the drop behind him, the sheer, empty space. My entire body was humming with a single primal command: get away from the edge, that's all that mattered. Edit, okay, my hands are shaking so bad I can barely type this. Thank you for the comments. The ones that say I'm not a monster anyway, I'm trying to breathe. There's a detail I left out. I don't know why I left it out, maybe I was scared it would make me sound crazy. Or maybe I just didn't want to admit it to myself until now. When we were standing there on that ledge, him blocking the path, his voice getting louder and colder, something shifted. It wasn't just the words, it was his body. He wasn't just standing there arguing, he was positioning himself. He shifted his weight from his heels to the balls of his feet. It was a subtle thing, the kind of detail you'd never notice unless your entire being was screaming at you that you were in danger. It was the way a wrestler plants himself before a takedown. A coiled spring, and his eyes, God, his eyes, they weren't angry anymore. The rage had burned away and left something else in its place, something chillingly calm. It was a look of absolute, final decision. He was looking at me, but it was like he was looking at an object, a problem he was about to solve. In that split second, I knew. It wasn't a thought, it was a certainty that flooded every cell in my body. He was going to push me. All the little things from the past few months suddenly clicked into place. The weird silences. The way he'd started talking about our future in the past tense. The life insurance policy he'd insisted we both get a few months back, the one I'd thought was just him being responsible. He wasn't arguing about me leaving him. He was making sure I never would. That's when I took the step back. It was a reaction to that look in his eyes. It was a reaction to the shift in his stance. It was self-preservation. It had to be. Now I'm sitting here in our apartment, and every creak of the floorboard sounds like his footsteps. The wind rattling the window sounds like him whispering my name. I know it's just grief, I know it's just shock. But a part of my brain, a dark, terrified little part, is convinced he's going to walk through that door and finish the job. It's been a week, the funeral was yesterday. I wore a black dress he once told me he liked, which felt like a special kind of self-punishment. I cried at the right moments. I accepted condolences from people who looked at me with a mixture of pity and a weird, morbid curiosity. They see a tragic figure. I feel like a fraud in a costume. Dimitri's mother, a woman I've always found intimidating, held my hand. Her own was trembling and cold, her knuckles like little stones. "You are still family, dear," she whispered, her breath smelling of mints and grief. I had to physically lock my knees to keep from collapsing. I almost threw up on her expensive-looking shoes. Sleep isn't happening, not real sleep anyway. I drift off for a few minutes at a time and I'm immediately back on that ledge, but the memory is slippery. It's like a film that's been run through the projector too many times, getting warped and scratched with each viewing. The details change. In one version, the wind is screaming, and I see that cold, final decision in his eyes, and I flinch back in pure animal terror. My step is a desperate, clumsy retreat. In another version, the wind dies down to an eerie hush right before he speaks, and I just see a sad, angry man, his face crumpled with despair. In that version, my step back feels different. It feels measured, deliberate, cold. Did I really see that look in his eyes? Or did my mind invent it afterward, a convenient justification cooked up by my survival instinct to protect me from the truth? The truth of that single, sickening moment of relief I felt when he was gone. I won't lie to you, internet strangers. For a split second after his scream was swallowed by the wind and the waves, all I felt was the air rushing back into my lungs. The crushing weight that had been sitting on my chest for years, the one I'd gotten so used to I didn't even notice it anymore, was just gone. And the guilt from feeling that relief is so much heavier than the grief. It's a physical thing, a hot stone in my gut. To fight it, I've been arming myself with his flaws. I've been turning him into a monster in my head because it's the only way I can live with myself. I sit in the dark of my living room and I make a list. I remember the time he jokingly told my friends my new haircut made me look cheap. The way he'd go through my phone while I was in the shower, then act offended if I questioned him. The time he convinced me to turn down that promotion because it would mean more travel and he'd be too lonely, framing his control as romantic devotion. I remember how he'd belittle my taste in music, in books, in everything, until I just started agreeing with him to keep the peace. Each memory is a brick I'm using to build a wall around what happened on that cliff. He was a controller, he was emotionally abusive, he was slowly sanding me down into someone I didn't recognize. His death wasn't a tragedy, it was an escape. An escape I didn't ask for, but an escape nonetheless. I repeat these things to myself like a prayer, a desperate mantra to keep the other thoughts at bay. The thoughts that whisper about his good side. The way he'd make me soup from scratch when I was sick, spending hours simmering the broth. The time we drove all night just to see a meteor shower and he held me wrapped in a blanket, pointing out the constellations. Those memories are the dangerous ones. They're the ones that make me wonder if I'm the monster after all. Everything changed this afternoon. The wall I'd been building, all those carefully selected bricks of his awfulness, it all just came crashing down. The phone rang and the caller ID said Eliza, Dimitri's younger sister. I almost didn't answer. I've been dodging calls from his family, offering polite but brief text responses. But something made me pick up. She was crying, obviously, a raw hiccuping sound that made my stomach clench. She said she was sorry to bother me, but she couldn't stop thinking, couldn't make sense of it. I made some soothing, meaningless noises, waiting for the inevitable question about his last moments, but that's not what she asked. "The thing I don't get, Courtney," she said, her voice thick with tears, "is why he was even there. On a cliff, of all places." I mumbled something about the view, how he'd said it was supposed to be beautiful. There was a pause on the line, and then Eliza let out a wet, confused laugh. The view, but Dimitri was terrified of heights. I mean cripplingly terrified. The world tilted on its axis. I held the phone so tight my knuckles were white. "What do you mean?" I asked, my own voice sounding distant and strange. "You didn't know?" She sounded genuinely surprised. Oh God, I guess he was always so embarrassed about it, he probably never told you. When we were kids, we went to the state fair. My dad took us on the Ferris wheel. Dimitri had a full-blown panic attack at the very top, screaming, crying, he even threw up. He was 8. After that, he wouldn't even stand on a balcony. He couldn't watch movies with scenes on rooftops. It was a real phobia, Courtney, a serious one. The phone felt slick in my hand, a phobia. Not just a mild dislike, a phobia. The man who couldn't stand on a balcony insisted on taking me to a treacherous cliffside path on a windy day. The man who had a panic attack on a Ferris wheel chose a spot with a sheer drop to have a life-altering argument. Eliza's words weren't an accusation, they were a lament. A confused sister trying to understand her brother's death, but to me they were a key. A horrible, rusty key that unlocked a door I had been pretending wasn't there. He didn't just happen to be in a dangerous place. He chose it. He chose it because he was afraid of it. He overcame his deepest, most primal fear. And there's only one emotion I can think of that's strong enough to conquer a lifelong phobia like that. The intent to commit murder. My justification, the one I'd been desperately clinging to, that he was a monster, was suddenly terrifyingly true. But it didn't bring the relief I thought it would. It just made my own role in it all feel so much darker. Eliza's call broke me. It's like I've been holding my breath for a week and I can finally let it out, but it comes out as a sob. All the energy I've spent trying to convince myself, trying to build my case, it's all gone. And in the quiet that's left, the truth is just sitting there. It's heavy and ugly and undeniable. I'm not typing this for you anymore. I'm not looking for validation or absolution, I'm just looking at it. For the first time, I'm looking right at it. He was going to kill me. He overcame a lifelong, paralyzing fear to get me to that spot, a place where no one would see, where the wind and the waves would cover any sound. A place where a simple push would look like a tragic accident. The whole day, the fight, it was all a script. He was building to his big finale. And here is the part I haven't admitted to anyone, not even myself, not really. When I saw that look in his eyes, that dead, calm certainty, I didn't just feel fear. For a fraction of a second, a sliver of time so small it almost didn't exist, I felt something else. It was a cold, sharp, and shockingly clear thought. It's him or me. And in that moment, I chose me. My step back wasn't just a flinch, it wasn't just a reflex, it was a decision. It was a non-action that was the most profound action of my life. I didn't push him, I didn't touch him. But I saw the abyss in front of him, I saw the unstable ground, and I used his own momentum, his own murderous intent against him. I let it happen, I watched it happen. I stepped back and I let the laws of physics and his own terrible choice do the rest. I stood there on that ledge and I let him fall, I let him die. And the relief I felt wasn't just about the weight being lifted. It was the relief of the victor, the grim, hollow relief of survival. Final update, the police called this morning. Just a formality, they've officially closed the case. The park rangers report my statement, the treacherous condition of the trail, it all points to one simple conclusion: accidental death. They offered their condolences again. I thanked them, my voice steady. It's over. The official version of the story is now written in permanent ink. Thank you to everyone who read this, who commented. You've been a strange, anonymous jury for the trial that's been happening inside my head. You've let me be the victim, the monster, the survivor, and the liar. Many of you asked if I feel guilty. I've been asking myself that question every second of every day, and I think I finally have an answer. No, guilt is for people who did the wrong thing. He took me to that cliff to end my future, to erase me from the world because he couldn't stand the thought of me living a life that didn't revolve around him. He made his choice. And in that last second, he forced me to make mine. I didn't fire the gun, but my single step back was the same as pulling the trigger. I will live with that. I will carry the weight of that action, of that non-action, for the rest of my life. But it will be my life, a life he tried to steal from me. I survived, and that is not an accident.